Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It is Friday, August 16th around here, and we have a great show for you today. We're going to start talking about my All-American team picks. It's definitely a very, very interesting team that I've put together, but I definitely like it. I think it's a solid group. Then we'll give you a little bit of an update of one of the kind of rumors going around college football right now, a possible fall camp portal window coming into play over the next couple of years. Sounds like as of right now it's not being discussed too aggressively, but definitely something to keep your eye out on. Then we'll get into a couple of playoff hypotheticals like we did yesterday. We have five more for you today. Then we'll get into fall camp intel, a ton of injuries to update you on today before we jump into a couple of other things throughout the season. Then we'll get into a weekend roundup with a number of different things that have happened over the last couple of days, over the last week, that I want to make sure I have on y'all's radar. But before we jump in, I do want to remind you all we get tons of questions and comments throughout the show, and we love to hear from y'all. That's what we want here. We want to have an interactive experience between you and me, and the best way for y'all to do that is to use the super chat at the bottom of the chat. You'll see a little $sign. If you click on that, you're more than welcome to leave a question or a comment. It will show up on the screen. We can have a fun back and forth here. If you do not want to use that, you can use gsmcpodcast.net. Still, it is still up and running, and you're more than welcome to do that, but super thanks tends to be a little bit easier. Super chat, tends to be a little bit easier for you all. So definitely use that if you would like to. Really would love to have kind of an interactive experience here. But let's jump right in and let's talk about my All-American picks, because this is a very, very interesting season with, as we talked about, I feel like a couple of days ago, where the talent level across pretty much every position is out of this world. Having to find, the best two wide receivers, I think, this year, the best two running backs, or the best 5 O-linemen even, is very, very tough. So figuring that out was not easy by any means, but at the end of the day, I do think I have a pretty solid group here. It is projection for what I think the end of the year is going to look like. So going in, this would definitely look a little bit different. But I do have Quinn Ewers winning the Heisman, so he is my starting quarterback for the All-American first team. I feel like that doesn't need to be explained by any means. TreVeyon Henderson, I do have as one of my running backs. I think he's going to be downright special, and that two-headed monster at running back for Ohio State will tend to turn into one head throughout the season. Then we'll get into Omarion Hampton, the running back that from North Carolina that is truly just a monster. He's going to go absolutely crazy. Frankly, I think I might have picked him to do to win the Doak Walker if I was doing it today. But but regardless, he's going to have a remarkable year. And no, I do not have Ollie Gordon on this list. I think he takes a slight step back, and I think overall that offense just looks a little disfigured this upcoming year. Then we'll have our wide receivers, Luther Burden. He's the favorite for the Blitnikoff. He's a dark horse for the Heisman. He's the best offensive player in the country, in my opinion. So no question here. He is absolutely in the running to make this. And frankly, I'd be a little bit surprised if he wasn't at the very least on one of the All-American teams. And frankly, I'd be a little bit surprised if he wasn't on the first, frankly. But then we'll get into Kyron Lacy, a wide receiver that maybe you didn't expect to see on here. But this kid is special. And I think the only reason he wasn't special last year was Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors were on the team. So I think it's opened so many doors for him. Him and Connor Wegman obviously have a very good connection between them, and he's doing really special things in fall camp. I think it rolls right into the season, and he's one of those guys that finds his way probably into the first or second round of the NFL draft at the end of the year. Then Mitchell Evans, he's my pick for the Mackey Award winner this year. I think that offense is going to have to attack the middle of the field. I do like a lot of their wide receivers. I think they've made a number of steps forward, but whenever you're changing that much stuff at a specific skill position, you're going to need a little bit of help around the way, and I think Mitchell Evans is going to have a huge play in this offense, and maybe him and Riley Leonard develop like a Cam Rising, Brant Kuithe type connection throughout this year. So those are my skill position players. I think it's a really solid group. I think you could obviously talk me into Carson Beck or Dylan Gabriel making the quarterback run, or Jaden Ott down at Cal, or Damian Martinez at Miami being the running back. I almost almost put Xavier Restrepo from Miami at one of the wide receiver positions among a number of other people, Tory McMillan. I mean, the list goes on and on. It was a very, very hard group to put together because the skill positions this year are just out of this world good. But that's the group that I have. I do think those guys will end up separating just a little bit and will be on that first team All-American. Then the offensive linemen, and this was a little bit easier, frankly. There was one position that was pretty tough that we'll get to, but Will Campbell at one of the offensive tackle positions, he's the best offensive tackle in the country and the anchor of the best O-line in the country, if you were to ask me. So this is likely the easiest pick of this bunch, no doubt about it. He's an absolute beast, and I expect him to be the first O-lineman taken in this upcoming draft. Tate Ratledge, frankly, could be in the NFL right now. He decided to come back. He decided to try to win another national title with the Georgia Bulldogs, and he's going to be a force. He's an absolute problem on the interior, and he's going to move people around pretty much every single week, every single play. He's going to be an absolute monster and be drafted very, very high in the NFL draft. Parker Brailsford, I do have at my center position. There's a reason Alabama went out to get this kid. There's a reason that they were so intent, and yes, it was because of Seth McLaughlin's, shortcomings at that position, but they had people behind him that could have played. Parker Brailsford is just the best center in the country. He's definitely one of those guys that is going to be huge for this offense, and overall that interior looks ridiculous, and that's why I have Tyler Booker right next to him. I do think this was one I was between him and Donovan Jackson, the very talented guard for Ohio State, but I think Tyler Booker is special. I think he's one of the best athletes in the country at offensive line, if I'm being totally honest. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that NFL GMs are just falling over each other to draft once he's officially eligible. Kelvin Banks, the other linchpin of one of the other best offensive lines in the country over at Texas. This guy's been incredible since his freshman year, and he will definitely be a top 10, top 15 pick in the NFL draft by the end of the year. He's an absolute monster, and frankly, if I think Quinn Ewers is going to be special, then I kind of have to think Kelvin Banks is going to be special protecting him. So a huge, huge player for them, and frankly, I think he's going to have a monster season that ends in an All-American bid. Then we'll get into the defensive side of the ball. This one gets a little bit different. Frankly, I believe all of my defenders are from the Big Ten or SEC. I apologize, that's just the way it is, frankly. But my edge rushers, Michael Williams is someone that I think is going to have a huge year. I'm really buying into this kid. I think he might just lead the country in sacks this upcoming year, and I think he's someone that you saw flashes from freshman year, sophomore year, but now he's fully ready to take the reins and really be the dominating force on this defensive line, and I think he's going to do that and maybe more this upcoming year. Then I have James Pierce Jr. He's one of the most special players in the country, one of the most athletic edge rushers that I have ever seen, and one of those guys that it doesn't matter how good you are as an offensive tackle, he's going to be able to get around you, just plain and simple. He has so many moves in his bag and is an absolute beast at the point of attack. So a very, very good player. Frankly, I think it was between him and Ruben Bain, I was really fighting myself, and Michael Williams, really, those three players I was really fighting myself for. So Ruben Bain misses this by just a hair, but I do think those are my two picks there. I apologize. And then at linebacker, I have Harold Perkins. He's one of the most special players in the country. This guy can do everything that you want him to do on a football field, and it was just a defensive play caller last year that didn't put him in the right positions. But frankly, I think this staff is going to do an incredible job of that. I think they understand what they have in front of them, and I think they're definitely going to make the most of it. Danny Stutzman is one of the best linebackers in the country, and he is steady as can be for Oklahoma. He's going to have a ton of tackle. He's going to load up on those and just be an absolute dominating force, especially with a defensive line that is still kind of coming along. Seems to be pretty strong as of right now, but overall, I think Danny Stutzman's going to be just an absolute beast in the middle of that defense. CJ Allen is my probably hot take here. I do think this kid is just an absolute monster. He's a sophomore, and he's someone that is going to be an absolute beast throughout his career at UGA, but I do think it starts this year. I think he's in the middle of that defense, and he makes all types of problems for every other offense that he faces. I think he's an absolute monster and someone that is going to be incredible not only this year, but going down the line in his college career. He's going to be out of this world good. At defensive tackle, I do have Jamari Caldwell. I think there's a reason that Oregon went out and got him, and it was such a massive pickup. he's someone that can do incredible things this year. He had 6 sacks a year ago at defensive tackle for Houston. I think he might just be right around that number this upcoming year, but do a little bit better on a little bit better of a defense. So I do think he's one of those players that's going to take a big time step forward. And I think with some of the other defensive tackles around the country being out with injury or different things getting in their way, I do think Jamari Caldwell has a little bit of an opening to make some plays. Mason Graham, I just couldn't leave off here. He's the best defensive tackle in the country, and he's someone that's going to be a problem for every single O-line he faces. I think a good moniker, if he dominates that Texas O-line in week 2, he's on his way to an Outland Trophy. I am being very on it. This dude is going to be an absolute monster, and if he can dominate the interior of that Texas offensive line, it's going to be a long day for anyone that faces him this upcoming year. Caleb Downs is Will Johnson is one of my corners. I have best coverage corner in the country as far as I'm concerned. A really good tackler, and frankly, there's a world where he just doesn't get thrown out a ton, and maybe he's left off this list because of that, because he doesn't have the stats. But at the end of the day, it's pretty much a no-fly zone on his side of the ball. Caleb Downs coming over from Alabama to Ohio State. This kid is just different. There's a reason that he was the top tackler for Bama as a freshman, and I think he might just up that number this year. He's an absolute monster, and he's going to do incredible things on the defensive and maybe offensive side of the ball throughout this year. Malachi Starks, frankly, to me, he's the highest IQ safety in the entire country, and it's a huge reason why I feel really good about this Georgia defense as we head into this year. I think this guy is the perfect person to have back there, especially with some of the worries that you have in the back end. Having that guy back there is an absolute luxury. And then Jabbar Muhammad. I thought it was a huge pickup for Oregon in the portal. He was one of the best corners in the country last year at Washington. I think he ups his game even a little bit more and plays really good football this year, and it ends in an All-American team. Finally, my special teams All-Americans, these are a little bit more straightforward, I'll be totally honest. Graham Nicholson, he is wearing a Miami of Ohio jersey there. He is now at Bama, but he's the Lou Groza Award winner from a year ago. He's someone that is just going to be incredible this upcoming year. I think Bama's offense is going to be really good. Maybe they're going to struggle to get in the end zone in those tight window throws that Jalen Milroe needs to make. I think he kicks a ton. And then Bert Auburn's going to give him a run for his money, but I tend to lean Graham Nicholson on this one. Alex Mastromano is an absolute beast of a punter for Florida State and could be a huge asset for them this upcoming year. Came in second for the Ray Guy Award a year ago, and both the finalists that were with him have moved on to the next level. So I'm not overthinking this one. I'm going to take Alex Mastromano. Barry Brown is one of the most electric players in the country. I promise you, if you turn on a Kentucky game, this guy's going to make a play that will make your jaw drop. Just plain and simple, he can fly. Zachariah Branch is one of the most athletic, twitchy kids in the entire country, and one of those guys that he could catch the ball with someone 5 yards from him, make him miss, and go 70 yards for a touchdown. And then Travis Hunter, he had to be on here. He is a first-team All-American level player, but I just didn't have a place for him. But all-purpose makes tons of sense for this kid. He's an absolute beast and one of the best pure football players in the entire country. It was really fun to put this together. I'll be totally honest. It got me very excited about the number of talented players all across the country because it was not easy making any of these picks. There are so many players that are right behind him really fighting for those spots, and I think it's going to be a really fun group, and we're going to find out, who rises to the top, but the second and third teams are going to be absolutely stacked as well. So cannot wait for this season. Those are my picks for the All-American team, but let's take our first break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about kind of an interesting story, a possible fall camp portal window coming into play in the future. Sounds like coaches are not in favor right now, but as we know, a lot of things can change pretty quickly. So we'll talk about that right after this, so stick with us.